giants and dwarves. So when I'm talking about giants, I'm talking about a 572 millimetre female, 11 years of age, caught in Flinders Island. And in other words, it reached its minimum legal size in about 2 to 3 years. Dwarves or slow growers is a fish that's such as our observed fish from Georges Bay was 315 millimetres in total length and actually 14 years of age. That has been able to breed for 7-10 years potentially, and give those 10 years worth of dwarf genes, and it's still protected because it's still undersized. That's our worst dwarf, but if we go to the next click, in Victoria, their dwarves are 23 years of age and 27 centimetres. Their legal size is about 27 centimetres. So they've created a population that now asymptotes towards their minimum legal size. So this is just a couple of areas. There's our Flinders Island, which is what we use for our biological sort of potential, virgin growth potential of our species. And then if we can compare that to where we're at now with mean size and age, so each 2-year-old in the channel or in Georges Bay measures at about just over 200. But at Flinders, a 2-year-old is just undersized. And then we can see in Georges Bay, we've got examples of stunted dwarves all the way through to 12 and even 14 years of age, and they're all still undersized. So this is a little bit of a problem, and it's a well-known artifact of fishing called fishing-induced evolution, where excessive fishing effort and pressure and take of our large fish results in all the reproductive dwarves breeding and contributing all of their genes into the populations and not anything into the super giants. If you think of a paddock of rams and the farmer then harvests all the stud rams and next year only breeds from his runt rams or lambs, then he's not going to have a good crop next year. So that's sort of what we're doing in a way, or we potentially could be doing and going down that track. So this is a real worry, and it's a well-known phenomenon in heavily fished stocks.
Yeah. So, and then coming back to your question, Hooch, this is one of the things that we need to understand a bit deeper, and that we'll be putting into the future research funding request, is because this may affect sort of the recovery time of the population. Like ideally, we want those fast-growing basketballers to be coming through quite quickly in the population, and moving away from the horse jockeys, the little guys. So, because they're the ones that will bring that biomass back. So how do you do that? We need to kind of understand what's causing that variation in growth. Is it a regional issue? Is it purely, literally, as James is saying, a fishing issue? Are there ways that we can look around it? And also, how do we address that in the model as well? Because we have with different population structures. As I said, all this is based on population structures, how we model things, and we're now literally dealing with different population structures of the same species. So it's becoming a complicated problem.
I think it's also important to note that 50 centimetre size plus fish have been recorded down south, but they're all absent now, and so it's a bit of a problem for mean size of age.
Yep. All right.
What's the next slide? Yeah, impact.
So is there any more questions, Jane, that we haven't covered? So now we start to get into...
There is one on the slower growing fish, if you wanted to end on one of those rather than doubling back. If the present areas impacted are being selected for slower growth fish, how are size limits going to help, given that populations are being dominated by genetic runts? Is there a need to bring in a new gene pool fish to overcome this? And how are size limits going to play a role in this?
Do you want me to have a crack at that, Sean? Yeah?
Yep.
So first of all, if the size limits go up, we may get an extra spawning season of fish that are actually fast growers, if the fast growers are recruiting to those areas. And so the size limits will actually maybe give an extra year of spawning for those. dominated by runts. Is there a need to bring new gene pool into the fish? This is where Sean was saying we really need to understand it. It could be a possible scenario, looking at a feasibility of restocking with maybe Flinders Island brood stock or those sorts of things. That could be part of the role. And then size limits. The other thing is that if we can shotgun them through, and with slot limits, the slot limits, if they can get through the slot, what we find, if the slot is small enough, the fast growing fish can shoot through the slot quickly, but the runts won't. And so therefore the runts will be selected to fishing pressure for a longer period of time than actually the fast growing fish.
Yep. Yep, that's spot on. And the other bit just there, James touched on it, is stock enhancement, and we are looking at you know, a potential feasibility study on that for flathead. So the interesting thing is for flathead, as I said, there's no issue with recruits coming through. So even if we breed, you know, we bring some fish in, we breed them up, and we release 1 million new baby flathead down the channel, it really is kind of a fairly small effect in terms of what's naturally occurring. But what James is suggesting there, and I think the question's getting at, is there an advantage of kind of, you know, putting the population on steroids and injecting in some of those faster growing animals into some of these really depleted or stunted populations? So we'll be looking at the feasibility of that. One is in terms of cost. Two is in terms of how effective it would be. So we need to actually understand what that, you know, what that would do. And also three, it's important if you're doing anything with genetic modification or moving things around, that you thoroughly understand what the impacts of that could potentially be. So yeah, but there was definitely a feasibility study on the cards.